"You ain't riding my stage." The grizzled driver spits at the elegantly dressed black woman, unaware she owns the town sprawling behind him in the desert dust. Onlookers snicker and whisper, dismissing her as another uppity stranger destined for humiliation and defeat in their unforgiving frontier settlement. The weathered sheriff observes from the shadows, his keen eyes catching details others miss. The quality of her leather satchel, the confidence in her posture, the legal documents clutched in her gloved hands. What he doesn't know is that she holds the power to transform everything, but only if she can survive 6 months of deception while a hidden enemy works to steal her birthright and destroy the community from within. Will she reveal her secret and risk losing everything, or watch the town crumble under corruption and prejudice? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty main street of Millbrook Creek as Evelyn Jessup stepped down from the supply wagon. Her polished boots touched the ground with quiet authority. The refined traveling dress and matching gloves marked her as someone from back east, someone who didn't belong. Townspeople paused their morning routines to stare. Whispers began immediately. Evelyn adjusted her leather satchel and walked toward the Stagecoach station. The documents inside rustled softly with each step. 3 months of travel had led her here to this moment, to this town that held her future. Jake Thornberry spat tobacco juice into the dirt and wiped his grizzled beard. 20 years of driving stagecoaches had taught him to spot trouble. This woman spelled nothing but complications. Sheriff Charles Maddox leaned against the general store's wooden post. His weathered hands rested on his belt as he watched the scene unfold. Something about the woman's composure caught his attention. Most newcomers showed nervousness or excitement. She displayed neither. The stagecoach sat ready for departure. 2 passengers already waited inside. A traveling salesman mopped his sweating brow, while a rancher's wife clutched her handbag tightly. Evelyn approached the driver's bench where Jake checked his harnesses one final time. "I need passage to the county seat," she said. Jake barely glanced up. "Stage is full. I can see empty seats. Not for your kind." Jake's voice carried across the dusty street. A crowd began gathering. The blacksmith emerged from his shop. The banker peered through his window. Mayor Crowley stepped out of his office with obvious interest. Evelyn's spine straightened. "I have money for fare." "Don't matter what you got! Company policy!" Sheriff Maddox pushed off from the post and walked closer. The woman's clothing suggested education and means. Her speech patterns confirmed it. Nothing about her fit Jake's crude assumptions. "Maybe we could work something out," Maddox suggested quietly. Jake shot him a warning look. "Ain't your business, Sheriff. This here's transportation matters." The salesman inside the coach shifted uncomfortably. The rancher's wife pulled her shawl tighter despite the morning heat. Evelyn opened her satchel and withdrew an envelope marked with official seals. "I have legitimate business in this town." "What kind of business?" Mayor Crowley stepped forward with false politeness, masking obvious suspicion. "Legal matters requiring immediate attention." Jake climbed onto his driver's bench. "Find yourself another way. We got schedules to keep." The crowd murmured approval. Some laughed openly. Others looked away with uncomfortable expressions. Evelyn surveyed the faces surrounding her. Each person represented a choice she would soon have to make. Each judgment they cast today would echo in the months ahead. "Then I'll make other arrangements." She turned toward the hotel across the street. "Good luck with that," someone called out. More laughter followed. Maddox watched her walk away. The quality of her leather goods, the precise cut of her dress, the confidence in her bearing all suggested resources beyond what most travelers carried. Questions formed in his mind. The Grandview Hotel's lobby smelled of furniture polish and old cigar smoke. The clerk, a thin man named Patterson, looked up from his ledger with barely concealed surprise. "I need your finest room," Evelyn said. Patterson's eyes darted nervously. "Well, I'm not sure we have anything suitable for traveling help." "I'm not anyone's help. I'm a guest with money." The awkward silence stretched until Patterson's greed overcame his prejudice. Paying customers were rare in Millbrook Creek. "Room 7, Second floor, $1 per night. Evelyn placed $2 silver on the counter. I'll be staying indefinitely. Across town, lawyer Edmund Fairweather paced his cramped office. The telegram in his trembling hands had arrived 3 days ago, announcing her impending arrival. 6 months. That's all the time she had to prove herself worthy of the inheritance. 6 months to accomplish what seemed impossible. The town struggled financially. 3 families faced foreclosure on their farms. The Rodriguez family had missed 2 mortgage payments. Widow Martha Klein couldn't pay her late husband's medical debts. The general store operated on credit that might run out any day. Worse yet, the books showed discrepancies Fairweather couldn't explain. Money allocated for town improvements had vanished. Emergency funds seemed to evaporate. Someone with access to official accounts was stealing from Millbrook Creek's future. Fairweather knew Victor Ashford was scheduled to arrive next month to check on his investment. Jeremiah Whitmore's former business partner had every legal right to claim the inheritance if Evelyn failed to meet the conditions. But Ashford didn't know about Evelyn's existence yet. The secret had been kept for 23 years. Jeremiah's marriage to Evelyn's mother had remained hidden even from his closest associates. The inheritance documents bore seals that few people could forge or fake. Evening shadows crept across Main Street as Evelyn sat by her hotel window. The town below looked peaceful, but her trained eye caught signs of economic strain. Empty storefronts, poorly maintained buildings, people moving with the careful economy of those watching every penny. Tomorrow she would begin the most challenging 6 months of her life. Success meant security and the chance to transform an entire community. Failure meant losing everything her father had built and leaving Millbrook Creek in the hands of someone who might destroy it completely. The stagecoach driver who had refused her passage that morning had no idea his job depended on her success. Neither did the banker, the mayor, or anyone else who had dismissed her so easily. But Sheriff Maddox continued watching her window long after darkness fell, sensing that nothing in Millbrook Creek would ever be quite the same again. Dawn broke cold across Millbrook Creek as Evelyn made her way to Fairweather's law office. The lawyer's hand shook as he unlocked the door. Dark circles under his eyes suggested sleepless nights filled with worry. The office smelled of old paper and fear. Legal books lined dusty shelves while stacks of documents covered every surface. Fairweather gestured to a chair across from his cluttered desk. "The documents you requested," he said, sliding a leather portfolio toward her. Evelyn opened the folder with steady fingers. Her father's signature adorned deed after deed. The bank building, the general store, the Grandview Hotel where she'd spent the night, the saloon, the stagecoach line, even the house where Mayor Crowley lived belonged to her. Jeremiah Whitmore owned everything, Fairweather whispered. Built this town from nothing after the railroad came through. The marriage certificate lay beneath the property deeds, her parents' union, legal but secret. Her father had protected his family the only way he knew how in 1864, by keeping them hidden from a world that would destroy them. The inheritance comes with conditions, Fairweather continued. 6 months residence. Prove your capability as owner. If you fail, everything transfers to Victor Ashford. Evelyn studied her father's will. The careful language revealed his deepest concerns. He'd known the challenges she would face. The precise wording gave her legal protection while requiring her to earn the community's acceptance. Ashford doesn't know about me? Your father never told his business partner about the marriage, about you. The weight of 23 years of secrecy pressed down on the small office. Evelyn's education at boarding schools back east, her mother's death 3 years ago, her father's careful provisions for a daughter he could never publicly acknowledge. How long before Ashford arrives? He's scheduled to inspect the properties next month. Evelyn memorized each document before sliding them back across the desk. Knowledge was power, but timing would be everything. The Rodriguez farm sat 3 miles outside town. Maria Rodriguez hung laundry while her husband Miguel repaired fence posts with obvious frustration. Their children played in the dirt yard, unaware their home faced foreclosure. Evelyn rode past on the horse she'd rented from the livery stable. The foreclosure notice nailed to their front door told the story. 2 months behind on mortgage payments. Final notice. Property auction scheduled for next week. She continued to the bank where Harrison Wells counted coins with meticulous care. The banker's ledger showed exactly what she expected. The Rodriguez account held insufficient funds. Widow Klein's medical debt exceeded her husband's life insurance. 3 other families faced similar situations. But someone had been making mysterious payments, small amounts deposited anonymously, never quite enough to solve the problems completely. Evelyn returned to her hotel room and opened her traveling trunk. Gold coins and banknotes filled a hidden compartment, her father's final gift. Enough money to save every struggling family in Millbrook Creek if used wisely. The next morning she visited Wells again. This time she carried a small cloth bag. "I'd like to make a payment on the Rodriguez account," she said simply. Wells looked up in surprise. "You want to pay someone else's debt?" "The full amount owed plus next month's payment." Gold coins clinked onto the counter. Wells counted twice before entering the transaction in his ledger. He asked no questions, but his eyes held new curiosity about the mysterious woman. Similar visits followed throughout the week. Widow Klein's medical bills disappeared overnight. The general store's struggling customers found their credit mysteriously restored. Each transaction was recorded as an anonymous donation. Sheriff Maddox watched these developments with growing interest. His investigation into Evelyn's background had yielded surprising results. The documents she carried bore authentic government seals. Her legal right to conduct business was unquestionable, but her source of funds remained a mystery that deepened daily. Dr. Samuel Hayes discovered the truth about the medical supplies first. His small clinic had operated on charity and hope for months. Suddenly, boxes of bandages, medicines, and surgical tools appeared with no explanation. The delivery boy mentioned seeing an elegantly dressed woman speaking with the suppliers, someone with an Eastern accent who paid in gold. The hotel clerk, Patterson, began treating Evelyn with grudging respect. Her extended stay meant steady income for the Grandview. Her quiet dignity contrasted sharply with the crude behavior she'd faced at the Stagecoach station. Mayor Crowley noticed the changes during his weekly rounds. Families who had worn desperation like old clothes now smiled again. The general store hummed with renewed activity. Even the cantina served more customers as people discovered money in their pockets. "Someone's been playing anonymous benefactor," he told Banker Wells over coffee. "Same person every time. Well-dressed woman. Pays in gold. Never gives a name." Sheriff Maddox joined their conversation with information of his own. Eastern education, legal documents that check out perfectly, staying at the Grandview indefinitely. The 3 men considered the implications. Millbrook Creek hadn't seen this kind of mysterious generosity since Jeremiah Whitmore's early days building the town. "Think she's connected to old Jeremiah somehow?" Wells asked. "Could be a distant relative, or maybe just someone with money and a conscience." They had no idea they were discussing the woman who owned their offices, their homes, and their futures. Jake Thornberry faced his own mystery that week. The Stagecoach developed wheel problems that would normally end his employment. The expensive repairs exceeded his savings by far. The blacksmith handed him a receipt marked "Paid in Full." Someone had covered the entire cost anonymously. The same mysterious woman other townspeople whispered about. Jake stood in his workshop holding the receipt. Guilt gnawed at his conscience as he remembered his harsh treatment of the elegant stranger. The woman he'd refused passage now walked through town performing acts of unexpected kindness. Evelyn observed the town's transformation from her hotel window each evening. Every family she'd helped represented a choice between justice and mercy. Every anonymous payment built trust she would need when the truth finally emerged. But time was running short. Victor Ashford's arrival would force her hand. The 6-month deadline approached like a gathering storm. Soon she would have to reveal herself completely and trust that her actions had earned what her birth never could: the respect of Millbrook Creek. The storm struck Millbrook Creek without warning. Rain hammered the wooden buildings while wind howled through the streets like a living thing. By dawn, Miller's Creek had swollen beyond its banks and torn away the main bridge connecting the town to the outside world. Mayor Crowley stood ankle-deep in mud surveying the destruction. The stone and timber bridge his grandfather had built, lay scattered downstream in twisted pieces. Without it, supply wagons couldn't reach town. The railroad spur depended on that crossing for materials and passengers. "How long to rebuild?" he asked the town's carpenter. "Months, maybe longer. We'd need engineers, heavy equipment, specialized materials." The implications hit immediately. No supplies meant businesses would fail within weeks. No passenger access meant the hotel and restaurants would close. The entire town faced economic collapse. Banker Wells calculated costs with growing panic. The town treasury held barely enough for basic operations. Bridge reconstruction would require thousands of dollars they simply didn't possess. "We could apply for territorial funding," suggested Dr. Hayes. "That takes months of paperwork. We don't have months." Sheriff Maddox had been unusually quiet during the emergency meeting. His attention kept drifting to the hotel across the street where Evelyn Jessup maintained her mysterious residence. The woman had appeared whenever crises struck other families. Her anonymous generosity had solved problems that seemed impossible, but this disaster dwarfed anything she'd tackled before. "What about private funding?" Maddox asked. Mayor Crowley laughed bitterly. "From who? Jeremiah Whitmore's been dead 3 years. His business partner lives back east and hasn't visited since the funeral." Evelyn studied the damaged bridge from the hotel's upper window. Engineering principles her Eastern education had drilled into her mind analyzed the destruction systematically. The foundation stones remained intact. The approaches needed repair, but weren't completely destroyed. A temporary crossing could be built quickly with the right materials and coordination, but it would require someone with both technical knowledge and significant financial resources. She made her decision. The town meeting convened in the saloon since it offered the largest gathering space. 37 residents crowded around tables while Mayor Crowley outlined their desperate situation. "Without that bridge, we're cut off completely. The territorial government might help eventually, but eventually won't keep us alive." Murmurs of worry filled the room. Families who had just recovered from financial hardship faced ruin again. The Rodriguez family exchanged fearful glances. Widow Klein dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. "I might have a solution." Every head turned toward the voice. Evelyn stood near the back of the room, her presence commanding immediate attention. She had attended several town meetings as an observer, but never spoken before. "You have engineering experience?" Mayor Crowley asked with obvious skepticism. "I studied at the Philadelphia Technical Institute, graduated with honors in civil engineering." Shocked silence greeted this revelation. Few women pursued such education anywhere, let alone succeeded in it. "What kind of solution?" Sheriff Maddox asked. Evelyn moved forward with calm authority. "A temporary span using steel cables and timber decking, strong enough for wagons and pedestrians, could be completed in 2 weeks with proper materials and workforce." She described the engineering concepts with precision that impressed even the skeptical carpenter. Tension calculations, load distribution, foundation requirements. Her knowledge was undeniably real. "Sounds expensive," Banker Wells said carefully. "Very expensive, but possible." The room erupted in discussion. Hope battled against financial reality. Everyone understood the technical solution was sound. Nobody believed they could afford it. "The materials alone would cost more than our entire treasury," Wells continued. "I'll provide the funding." Another stunned silence fell over the gathering. Jake Thornberry, sitting near the front, stared at her with growing confusion. "You'll pay for the whole thing?" Dr. Hayes asked. "Consider it an investment in the community." Mayor Crowley's political instincts sensed opportunity mixed with suspicion. "That's very generous, Miss Jessup. But we'd need to know more about your resources before accepting such an offer." "My resources are sufficient. My references are verifiable. The question is whether you want to save your town or debate my qualifications while it dies." The blunt truth silenced further objections. Sheriff Maddox stepped forward with the support she needed. "I've verified Miss Jessup's credentials. Her legal documents are authentic. Her previous anonymous contributions to struggling families proved her commitment to Millbrook Creek." That revelation sparked new murmurs. The mysterious benefactor had been among them all along. "You've been helping folks secretly?" asked Maria Rodriguez. Evelyn nodded simply. This community faces challenges that require community solutions. The vote was unanimous. Within hours, telegrams raced toward suppliers in 3 different cities. Evelyn's gold ensured priority delivery despite the remote location. Work crews assembled the next morning. Evelyn appeared wearing practical clothes and carrying surveying equipment. She worked alongside the men, calculating measurements and directing placement of materials with obvious expertise. Jake Thornberry found himself taking orders from the woman he'd refused passage weeks earlier. Her engineering knowledge far exceeded his understanding, but her leadership proved both decisive and fair. "How'd you learn to build bridges?" he asked during a water break. "Same way you learned to drive Stagecoach, practice and necessity." The simple answer carried deeper implications he was only beginning to grasp. Sheriff Maddox observed the construction with growing admiration. Evelyn commanded respect through competence rather than demanding it through status. Her workers responded to clear instructions and fair treatment. Dr. Hayes provided medical support for the dangerous work. He found opportunities to speak privately with Evelyn about her background and motivations. "Why Millbrook Creek?" he asked. "Surely your talents could be better used in larger cities." "Sometimes the smallest places need the most help." The bridge took shape with remarkable speed. Steel cables stretched across the gap while timber decking created a roadway strong enough for heavy wagons. Evelyn's calculations proved accurate in every detail. By the second week, supply wagons were crossing again. The hotel filled with grateful travelers. Businesses reopened with renewed confidence. But Evelyn knew her actions had consequences beyond saving the town. She had revealed capabilities that would generate questions she wasn't ready to answer. Her anonymous protection was ending just as Victor Ashford's arrival approached. The bridge stood complete, but her greatest challenges lay ahead. Victor Ashford arrived on the Tuesday morning stagecoach wearing an expensive suit and a predator's smile. His polished boots touched the platform with the confidence of a man who owned everything he surveyed. Jake Thornberry tipped his hat respectfully, unaware he was greeting the enemy. "Welcome to Millbrook Creek, Mr. Ashford," Mayor Crowley said with nervous enthusiasm. "We've prepared the finest accommodations." Ashford's calculating eyes swept across the bustling town square. The new bridge gleamed in the morning sunlight. Supply wagons rolled steadily across the span while merchants conducted brisk business. Everything appeared more prosperous than his last visit 3 years ago. "The town seems to be thriving," he observed carefully. "We've had some remarkable improvements recently. Anonymous benefactor helped us through some rough patches." The word anonymous triggered immediate alarm in Ashford's mind. Anonymous meant uncontrolled. Uncontrolled meant dangerous to his carefully constructed plans. From her hotel window, Evelyn watched the reunion below. Ashford's presence changed everything. Her 6-month deadline suddenly felt more like 6 minutes. The man who could steal her inheritance had arrived early with obvious suspicions. Sheriff Maddox noticed Evelyn's tension during their evening conversation on the hotel's front porch. Their friendship had developed naturally over weeks of shared discussions about justice and community leadership. "Something's got you worried," he said. "Change is coming whether we're ready or not." "What kind of change?" Before she could answer, Ashford emerged from the saloon with Mayor Crowley and Banker Wells in tow. The 3 men walked directly toward the hotel with purposeful strides. "Miss Jessup," Ashford called out with false friendliness. "I'm Victor Ashford, business associate of the late Jeremiah Whitmore. I understand you've been quite generous to our little community." Evelyn descended the porch steps with careful composure. "Generosity benefits everyone, Mr. Ashford." "Indeed it does. I'm curious about your connection to Millbrook Creek. Most travelers don't invest so heavily in places they're just passing through." The verbal sparring had begun. Ashford probed while Evelyn deflected. Sheriff Maddox watched the exchange with growing unease. "I believe in supporting communities that show promise," she replied smoothly. "How fascinating. Perhaps you'd join me for dinner tomorrow evening. I'd love to hear more about your business interests." The invitation sounded pleasant, but carried an undertone of command. Evelyn accepted with gracious reluctance while her mind raced through possibilities. That night, Ashford visited Lawyer Fairweather's office under cover of darkness. The nervous attorney had been dreading this moment for months. "The books don't balance," Ashford said without preamble. "Town funds are missing from multiple accounts." Fairweather's hands trembled as he opened the ledgers. Creative bookkeeping had hidden the theft for years, but Ashford's early arrival complicated everything. "There might be some discrepancies," Fairweather stammered. "Discrepancies suggest mistakes. This looks more like systematic theft." The accusation hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot. Both men knew the truth, but only one had the power to expose it. "Of course, missing money isn't necessarily criminal," Ashford continued. "Sometimes funds get redirected for legitimate community improvements. Bridges, for example. The blackmail was subtle, but unmistakable. Ashford would blame the embezzlement on bridge construction unless Fairweather cooperated with larger plans." "What do you need from me?" Fairweather asked weakly. "Information about our mysterious benefactor, starting with her real name and background." The investigation began immediately. Ashford questioned merchants about Evelyn's spending patterns. He examined hotel records and reviewed her financial transactions with the bank. Every piece of evidence pointed toward resources far beyond what any ordinary traveler possessed. Meanwhile, Evelyn conducted her own reconnaissance. She had Dr. Hayes casually probe Ashford's medical history during a social visit. The man suffered from chronic stomach problems that suggested years of stress and guilty conscience. Sheriff Maddox discovered irregularities in town financial records during a routine review. Emergency funds allocated for infrastructure improvements had vanished without corresponding work orders or receipts. The pattern suggested long-term systematic theft. "Someone's been stealing from the town treasury for years," he told Evelyn during one of their evening conversations. "Any suspects?" "Would have to be someone with access to official accounts. Someone the bank trusted completely." The pieces were falling into place for both sides. Evelyn realized Ashford's early arrival wasn't coincidental. He feared discovery of his embezzlement and needed to secure control before anyone investigated too deeply. Ashford reached similar conclusions about Evelyn. Her engineering knowledge, unlimited funding, and mysterious legal documents suggested connections to Jeremiah Whitmore. The timing of her arrival couldn't be accidental either. The confrontation came 3 nights later in Fairweather's office. Ashford had compelled the lawyer to arrange a private meeting under the pretense of discussing community investments. "You're Jeremiah's daughter," Ashford stated when Evelyn arrived. No questions or uncertainty. Pure accusation delivered with absolute confidence. "That's quite an assumption," she replied calmly. "The inheritance documents are in Fairweather's safe. I've seen them. Hidden marriage, secret child, 6-month probationary period before you can claim ownership." Fairweather sat frozen behind his desk as the two adversaries faced each other across his cramped office. "Even if that were true, what concern is it of yours?" Ashford smiled with genuine menace. "Because I've been managing Jeremiah's estate for 3 years, managing it very profitably for myself." The admission hung between them like a loaded weapon. Evelyn had suspected embezzlement, but hadn't grasped the full scope of Ashford's theft. "The missing town funds," she said, "among other creative financial arrangements. Your claim threatens to expose activities that would be difficult to explain." "So you're proposing what exactly?" "Sign over your inheritance rights. Disappear quietly. In exchange, I won't destroy this town's economy before leaving with everything of value." The ultimatum was delivered with casual brutality. Submit or watch Millbrook Creek burn. Outside, Sheriff Maddox pressed his ear against the office window. Every word of the conversation reached him clearly through the thin glass. Evelyn had seconds to decide between revealing her identity or watching her father's legacy crumble into ash. Evelyn straightened her shoulders and met Ashford's threatening stare with unwavering resolve. "I call for an emergency town meeting. Tomorrow evening. Everyone deserves to know the truth." Ashford's face darkened with rage. "You're making a fatal mistake, girl. This town will reject you the moment they learn what you are." "We'll see about that." Sheriff Maddox stepped through the office door with his hand resting on his badge. "Evening, folks. Heard raised voices and thought I'd check on everyone's welfare." The lie was transparent but effective. All three people in the room understood he had overheard everything. "Just a business discussion, Sheriff," Ashford said with forced calm. "Sounded more like threats to me. Miss Jessup, you need an escort back to the hotel?" Evelyn nodded gratefully. Outside, Maddox walked beside her in thoughtful silence until they reached the hotel steps. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Suspected for weeks." Tonight confirmed it. "Your father was a good man who built this town from nothing." "And Ashford?" "Been stealing from us for years, apparently. Question is, what do we do about it?" The next day passed like the calm before a tornado. Word spread quickly about the emergency meeting. Speculation ran wild through the streets as residents debated what crisis could require such urgent attention. Jake Thornberry spent the afternoon in deep contemplation. His harsh treatment of Evelyn on that first day haunted him more each week. Her subsequent kindness and leadership had shamed him beyond measure. Dr. Hayes prepared his medical bag, sensing the evening might bring emotional upheaval that could affect community health. Several elderly residents suffered from weak hearts that couldn't withstand too much excitement. The Rodriguez family discussed the meeting over dinner. Miguel wondered if their mysterious benefactor would finally be revealed. Maria hoped whoever had saved their farm would receive proper recognition. Widow Klein chose her finest dress for the occasion. Someone had rescued her from destitution, and she wanted to look respectable when offering her gratitude. By sunset, the entire population of Millbrook Creek had gathered in the church. The largest building in town could barely contain everyone. Ashford sat in the front row wearing his most expensive suit like armor. Mayor Crowley called for order as Evelyn rose from her seat. The room fell silent as she walked to the front with a leather portfolio in her hands. "3 months ago, I arrived in this town as a stranger," she began. "Many of you treated me with suspicion and hostility. Others showed kindness despite your uncertainty about my intentions." Her clear voice carried to every corner of the packed church. Jake Thornberry shifted uncomfortably in his pew. "Tonight I'm going to tell you who I am and why I came to Millbrook Creek." She opened the portfolio and withdrew the first document, her parents' marriage certificate. "In 1864, Jeremiah Whitmore married my mother, Catherine Jessup, in Philadelphia. Their union was legal but kept secret for obvious reasons." Gasps echoed through the church. Several people leaned forward in their seats. "I am Evelyn Jessup Whitmore, Jeremiah's daughter and legal heir to his entire estate." The revelation hit the gathering like a physical blow. Some residents stared in shock while others whispered frantically to their neighbors. "That means you own," Mayor Crowley began, "everything. The bank, the hotel, the general store, the Stagecoach line, most of the residential properties." Banker Wells looked like he might faint. Jake Thornberry's face had gone completely pale. "But ownership without community acceptance is meaningless," Evelyn continued. "My father's will required me to prove myself worthy of his legacy, to earn your respect through actions rather than demand it through legal documents." She gestured toward Sheriff Maddox, who stood near the back of the church. "Sheriff Maddox will now present evidence of crimes committed against this community." Maddox moved forward, carrying a second portfolio filled with financial records. His investigation had uncovered years of systematic theft. Victor Ashford has embezzled thousands of dollars from town accounts over the past 3 years. Money meant for schools, emergency funds, infrastructure improvements. The accusations sparked angry murmurs. Ashford jumped to his feet with desperate fury. "These are lies, fabricated documents designed to discredit me." "The bank records speak for themselves," Maddox replied calmly. "Wells can verify every transaction." All eyes turned to the banker, who nodded reluctantly. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Ashford threatened to destroy this town's economy unless Miss Whitmore surrendered her inheritance to him. I witnessed that conversation personally. The crowd's anger shifted toward Ashford, who realized his position had become untenable. Years of theft were about to be exposed completely. "You think they'll accept you?" he snarled at Evelyn. "These people will never follow someone like you, no matter what papers you carry." The church fell silent as his words hung in the air. This was the moment Evelyn had dreaded and prepared for simultaneously. Jake Thornberry stood up slowly, every head turned toward the grizzled stagecoach driver who had refused Evelyn passage on her first day. "I got something to say." His weathered hands shook slightly as he faced the gathering. "Miss Whitmore asked me for passage 3 months ago. I refused her based on nothing but the color of her skin and my own ignorance." The admission carried clearly through the silent church. "Since then, she's saved this town from financial ruin, built us a bridge when we had no hope, helped families keep their homes and businesses." Jake's voice grew stronger with each word. "She never asked for recognition or thanks, never used her wealth to demand special treatment. She earned my respect through character, not through legal papers." He looked directly at Evelyn with genuine remorse. "I was wrong that first day, dead wrong. If anyone in this town deserves our support and leadership, it's her." Dr. Hayes stood next. "Miss Whitmore funded medical supplies that saved lives. Never asked for credit." Maria Rodriguez rose with tears in her eyes. "She saved our farm when we had nowhere else to turn." One by one, residents stood to share their stories. Anonymous payments that prevented foreclosures, quiet assistance that restored hope, leadership during crisis that brought the community together. Ashford watched his support evaporate completely. Even Mayor Crowley and Banker Wells sided against him once the truth emerged. Sheriff Maddox stepped forward with iron handcuffs. "Victor Ashford, you're under arrest for embezzlement and extortion." The arrest proceeded without resistance. Ashford's threats had proven empty when faced with united community opposition. When the church finally emptied, Evelyn stood at the altar surrounded by people offering congratulations and support. The acceptance she had worked months to earn was finally hers. But the real work of leading Millbrook Creek toward a better future was just beginning. 6 months later, the morning sun cast golden light across a transformed Millbrook Creek. New buildings lined Main Street while fresh paint brightened every storefront. The sound of hammers and saws echoed from the construction site where the new schoolhouse was taking shape. Evelyn stood at her office window reviewing architectural plans for the town's expansion. The recovered funds from Ashford's embezzlement had provided seed money for improvements that would benefit generations. Her own investment had multiplied those resources tenfold. A knock at the door interrupted her planning. Jake Thornberry entered with his hat in his hands and a nervous expression on his weathered face. "Miss Whitmore, got the monthly passenger reports you requested." "Thank you, Jake. How are the new routes working out?" "Better than expected. Word spread about Millbrook Creek being a welcoming place for all travelers. Business is up 30% from last year." The transformation in Jake's character had been among the most dramatic changes in town. From the prejudiced driver who had refused her passage, he had become one of her most dedicated employees and advocates. "There's something else," he continued. "Got a family arriving on today's stage, mixed-race couple with 2 children. They heard about opportunities here and want to relocate." Evelyn smiled with genuine satisfaction. The reputation Millbrook Creek was building extended far beyond its borders. "Make sure they receive a proper welcome. Have Dr. Hayes check on the children after their journey. The hotel should provide their best accommodation." Jake nodded and turned to leave, then paused. "Miss Whitmore, I want you to know how grateful I am for the second chance you gave me. Most folks wouldn't have been so forgiving. Everyone deserves the opportunity to grow beyond their mistakes, Jake." After he left, Evelyn returned to her planning. The town council meeting that afternoon would address proposals for a new medical clinic, expansion of the general store, and establishment of a lending program for aspiring business owners. Sheriff Maddox appeared in the doorway wearing his formal uniform and a broad smile. "Ready for the dedication ceremony?" Together they walked toward the town square where residents had gathered around a large covered object. The new town sign represented more than simple identification. It symbolized Millbrook Creek's commitment to progress and inclusion. Mayor Crowley called for attention as the crowd assembled. His leadership had improved dramatically, once freed from Ashford's corrupting influence. 6 months ago, we faced our greatest crisis. Today, we celebrate our greatest triumph. He gestured toward Evelyn, who stepped forward to address the gathering. This town taught me that true leadership isn't about ownership or legal documents. It's about earning trust through consistent actions and shared sacrifice. She pulled the rope that removed the covering from the new sign. The carved wooden letters gleamed with fresh varnish. Millbrook Creek, a community of opportunity. Applause filled the square as families admired the symbol of their transformed home. Children who had been playing in the dust 6 months ago now attended classes in a proper schoolhouse. Parents who had faced foreclosure now planned business expansions. Dr. Hayes stepped forward with his own announcement. The new medical clinic will open next month with equipment that rivals facilities in major cities. Thanks to Miss Whitmore's investment, we can provide health care that was previously unavailable for hundreds of miles. The Rodriguez family had prepared a special presentation. Miguel carried a framed photograph showing their farm in full production, while Maria held a basket of fresh vegetables from their expanded gardens. Our family went from despair to prosperity because someone believed in second chances, Maria said. We want every newcomer to know they'll find the same opportunity here. Widow Klein had organized the Women's Auxiliary into a welcoming committee for new residents. Their first assignment was helping the mixed-race family that would arrive on the afternoon stage. The dedication ceremony concluded with a community feast prepared by volunteers from every household. Tables stretched across the square while residents shared food, stories, and plans for the future. As evening approached, Evelyn and Maddox walked toward the Stagecoach station, where Jake prepared for the day's final arrival. The couple and their children would receive the welcome that Evelyn had been denied 6 months earlier. Think they'll face the same challenges you did? Maddox asked. Some, perhaps, but they'll also find allies who understand the value of judging people by character rather than appearance. The Stagecoach appeared on the horizon, kicking up dust clouds that caught the sunset light. Jake straightened his uniform jacket and checked his welcoming speech one final time. The coach rolled to a stop with its usual creaking of leather and wood. Jake climbed down from his driver's seat and opened the passenger door with ceremonial flourish. "Welcome to Millbrook Creek," he announced warmly. "A community of opportunity where everyone has the chance to build a better future." The young father emerged first, followed by his wife and 2 small children. Their nervous expressions gradually relaxed as they absorbed Jake's genuine hospitality. "We heard this was a place where families like ours could find acceptance," the man said cautiously. "You heard correctly," Jake replied. "Miss Whitmore has made sure of that." Dr. Hayes approached with his medical bag to check the children's health after their long journey. Widow Klein and her committee offered food and temporary lodging. Mayor Crowley provided information about available business opportunities. The scene unfolded exactly as Evelyn had envisioned. Millbrook Creek had become the welcoming community her father had dreamed of building. Later that evening, Evelyn sat on the hotel porch with Sheriff Maddox, watching the town settle into peaceful darkness. Gas lamps illuminated the main street while families gathered in their homes to share the day's events. "Your father would be proud," Maddox said quietly. "He gave me the tools to succeed, but this community chose to embrace change rather than resist it." A year ago, Evelyn had been a stranger facing rejection and hostility. Tonight, she was the respected leader of a thriving town that had become a beacon of progress in the frontier wilderness. The stagecoach driver who had once refused her passage now served as an ambassador of welcome for travelers from all backgrounds. The town that had dismissed her as an outsider now celebrated her as their greatest asset. Change had come to Millbrook Creek not through force or legal mandate, but through the patient demonstration of character, competence, and compassion. The future stretched ahead bright with unlimited possibilities.